Today on Mission and Likeness, we're going to be talking about some practical ways to invest in your kids and get them off of screens. Then I have a conversation with Matt and Ben, who were on the front lines in the Ukraine when war broke out, and what God is doing with them next. Welcome to Mission and Likeness. My name is Scott. So thankful for you joining in on this conversation, on this episode. We have a great episode lined up for you. Like I said, Matt and Ben are going to be joining me here in just a little bit, and I want to talk about how we keep kids off of screens a little bit. This is just something that has really been a focus of mine, as someone who is currently staring at 3 screens, and if you count the cameras, 6 screens are all facing me. It's just become part of our lives, just having a screen in front of us, and then I have 2 more in front of me on phones. It's just, how can we escape some of these screens? Especially for kids, because it is so easy now that summer is like in full swing, and it's hot, and we just want to relax, and we just want to chill out and live peaceably with everyone. Screens can be a very easy way to just let the kids do what they want, and they keep quiet. And as I've said before, I obviously want my kids to get along, but I want to be part of their lives, like knowing that we have such a short amount of time to influence and help to mold them. I want this summer to be the starting point of really getting involved and helping them to see that there's more to life, that life isn't about screens. It's about what we do and how we treat each other and how we connect with others, and ultimately how we worship and glorify Jesus. So I saw this article. It's from Betsy Childs Howard, and it is on the Gospel Coalition. It was published on May 3rd this year, but it's 44 ways to keep kids off of screens. And so as I was reading down through some of these options, some of them are very basic. Some of them are very niche to what kids are interested in. And I'm just thinking to myself, my boys my oldest is getting really into reading, and my youngest is really into like writing and drawing. And so I'm trying to find ways to kind of incorporate all of this together. And I'm trying to be very intentional with my time to spend time with both of them together, and with my wife as a family unit. But then my wife and I are also trying to make sure that we are breaking down and spending time with each of our boys individually, because that's important too. I don't want them to think that they don't get any personal attention either. And so the first thing, Betsy kind of breaks down this article into different categories. And the first one is minimal parent involvement. The second category is no prep required. The third one is some physical activities that you can do, and then table activities that you can do. And then the last one is requires some supplies or toys. But all of these are fairly inexpensive. Most of them are absolutely free if you have some imagination. And so I just want to go through a couple of these. And now, remember, I'm not saying ban all screens and not let kids play video games or watch movies or anything like that. But what I am passionate about with this is if we aren't involved in our kids' lives, they're going to evolve naturally in what their own mind wants them to focus on. And we know that our minds are centered around selfishness. Like our born nature, our human nature is to be selfish. And the gospel actually is a complete rethinking of who our identity is. It's a brand new identity that we no longer think of ourselves, but we think of Christ. And we live for him and not for ourselves. And so if our kids don't know that, if our kids aren't being introduced to those kinds of ideas and those kinds of opportunities where we can serve and we can participate in activities and events and games with others, and we have to communicate, and we have to compromise, and compromise in a way that brings unity instead of divisiveness, then we have to be part of that. Because we should actually, as parents, be modeling that in our friendships and what's happening within our churches and within our friend groups and what we're doing on the day to day. We need to be modeling this as well. And I think part of the reason why we find it easier is we don't want to deal with it. We're looking for that quick and easy fix. Well, this will keep them occupied for a couple of hours. And what I think we fail to realize is, yeah, it might keep them occupied, but the consequences of that are going to be revealed in other areas. Because if they just continually get what they want and they're fed and they become the ruler of their own kingdom, they're never going to want to submit to other authority. And the whole gospel is that we submit to the authority of Jesus. And so how do we model that to our kids? And first, I say it starts with us as parents. Are we submitting ourselves to what the Bible tells us we are to do? And that is to train up our kids. That is to invest in our kids, to love our kids, to lead and disciple and equip our kids. Now, nothing in these 44 are directly tied to the gospel, but as parents, we can tie in gospel conversations into pretty much all of these things because these are vehicles in order to bring up those kinds of opportunities and those questions. So I'm gonna just list one from the minimum parent involvement, and it's let kids build forts out of chairs and blankets. This is something that even as an adult I love to do. We will every once in a while, we will either in our downstairs living room or even in our sunroom, we'll bring the mattresses out. We bring all the pillows and all the blankets and we just build a fortress out of everything. And it's just a fun thing. And we allow them to build, like, you're in charge of this section and I'm going to build this section. And we need an escape route over here because, obviously our cats will get involved in this and they, are exploring and they want to figure out what's going on. And so we have to make a place for them. And then we can bring in, a board game and we can play a board game, within the fort. And it actually is a good time. And sure, there's opportunities to share the gospel in there. And there's definitely opportunities for fights and conflict and that kind of stuff to break out. But when you're working together, you kind of want to put that aside because you don't want to ruin the good moments. And even kids don't. They're more willing to compromise and put preferences aside so that everyone can participate together. And that at least gives you the opportunity to present and to parent and to, point them in the direction that we need to point them in. And I'm actually going to list one more, and it's room time. This is something that Carly and I have implemented for our kids, where we'll say, go to your room for a half hour, no screens. And surprisingly, and it shouldn't be surprising, because as a kid, I did this all the time. I played in my room for hours and hours and hours with no screens. But give kids a set period of time, maybe start with 30 minutes. That's what Betsy suggests. And I would say that's probably good. And you can build your way up. Allow them to read, allow them to color, allow them to build their own fort, allow them to color and do whatever they want. And you'll be surprised that it may take a couple of times, but kids are so creative. They will come up with so many different fun games and activities. And then as a parent, you can go in, if they come up with a game or if they build something, come in and be part of that. After they've had their alone independent time, go in and celebrate with them what they were able to do. I mean, don't glorify them and everything, but what I'm saying is go in and celebrate and say, look at what you did. This is awesome. Way to use your imagination. Teach me how you came up with this. And allow them to articulate it back to you. And you'll just smile from ear to ear for what these kids can come up with. A couple of other things where there's no prep required. look at a family photo together. We'll do that. Our family photos are typically on screens, though. We don't have very many, physical ones, but we can do that. Hold a snail race. I've never heard of this, but this is something that my boys would probably be interested in. A snail race is the opposite of a regular race. The last one to the finish line wins. The catch is that every participant must keep moving and never stop. So you can't just stand still. You actually have to begin moving. And I mean, parents, if you're looking to take up time, the longer it goes on, some physical activities that you can do. Go for a walk, teach kids the limbo. And this one is a favorite of mine, play hallway hockey. In our house, we do have a rather long hallway down where the bedrooms are. And players at either end of the hallway aim to get the puck or ball past their opponents. One of the things that we have done to kind of make this a little bit more fun and to make us feel like goalies is we will get pillows and put our legs down through the opened end of the pillow with the padding on the front, and we'll get a ball or whatever and try to kick it past them. And that way, if it hits the pillows, one, it doesn't hurt them, and two, it's just a cool thing because you can use your blocker, to kind of block the ball. So that's a fun thing to do as well. Make a balance beam on the floor with masking tape. This is a good activity. We haven't done it, but I'm sure my boys would enjoy that. Some table activities. Teach your kids how to play war. My youngest loves playing war. It's a card game where, you flip the cards and, you split the deck in half, and you should know how to play war. Look it up. Puzzles are a great thing that my boys like to be able to do. You can make paper airplanes. I am personally terrible at making paper airplanes, but there are YouTube videos that do a great job at allowing you to do that. My boys and I and my wife, we love playing chess. And so chess boards are relatively inexpensive if you don't have one. Again, and this is the draw. This is the struggle, because you can play chess on your phone. It's absolutely free. You just download the app. But we're trying to stay off of screens, and so a physical board is great. Or you could just play tic-tac-toe. You could draw a board on dry erase or on pieces of paper and play tic-tac-toe. Or hangman. Hangman was a fun game that we always used to play, and you can do that as well. Now, the last couple that I want to get through are ones that do require some supplies or some toys. One is Play-Doh or kinetic sand. Those are great things that you can build and shape and mold. Now, if you're someone who freaks out whenever the colors and everything get kind of mushed together, you might want to start with just one color. Sidewalk chalk, bubbles. Hold a contest to see who can build the highest block tower that doesn't topple. Play Uno. Play one of the many structured games with Nerf guns. Nerf guns are a great thing to do. Go outside and just throw a football. Play with soccer ball. Dribble a basketball. Play baseball. Go for a walk in your neighborhood. There's so many things that we can do that, one, as you're playing and as you're doing these activities, one, you'll see the creativity that your kids really have and how they can operate within a team atmosphere, but also it develops some opportunities for individual playing where they can be independent. And that is also good. But then it also is going to bring up some opportunities of conflict where you can get to heart level things. Why do you want to do things this way? Why do you feel that way? Why can't you let go of your preference in this situation? And so there's always opportunities to bring it back to the gospel and how we are following Jesus. And it's a great way for us to model how we can resolve conflict as adults too. And our kids are going to pick up on that. So definitely try over the next couple of weeks that we have left of summer, really, try to implement some of these things. It may not be daily. It might be once a week. It might be twice a week. But as much as you possibly can, invest in your kids. Maybe read the Bible together as a family. Pick up a kid's Bible and read with them. We have a great conversation coming up with Matt and Ben. That is next here on Mission to Likeness, so please don't go anywhere. So coming up next, we're going to be talking with Matt and Ben, who were on the front lines in the war with Russia in the Ukraine, and then God is doing some mighty things in how He is shaping them, and He's going to be sending them. So we're going to be talking with them next. There is a link in the bio or in the show notes where you can support them personally. So I hope that after this conversation, you'll want to learn more about them and what they're doing, and maybe even support them. So definitely check out that link below. Also, I would love for you to support loveLocal. You can go to lovelocalpa.com/join and become a local. Get access to exclusive content that is only here on lovelocalpa.com. We'll be right back. Knowing the principles and values of the businesses and organizations that you support is growing more and more important each and every day. That's why here at loveLocal, we are building a community of people that support businesses like yours and share in your beliefs. So if your business or organization would like to partner with us and help us build that culture and community, visit lovelocalpa.com/partner and fill out our free partnership form today. Welcome back to Mission and Likeness here on loveLocal. And today I am joined by two guys who were introduced to me, and we just want to talk about their story and what God is doing in their lives and what He's been doing in their lives over the last few months and years. And so they are Matt and Ben, and they're coming to me via video, but you're not going to be seeing them because of safety concerns, and we're going to be getting into that a little bit later in the show, but they're coming from Missouri. And so, Matt and Ben, thanks for joining me here on Mission and Likeness.
Yeah, we're excited to be here.
So, we were introduced through a mutual contact, a mutual friend, and they said, you need to talk to Matt and Ben because they have recently gone through some experiences that they just felt needed told. And that was, you guys were part of the Christian effort in the Ukraine whenever things kind of went off over there. And so talk a little bit about, first, how did you even get involved from Missouri to be sent over to the Ukraine to be on the front lines?
So through the organization that we're with, we had been hired on there for about 6 months, I believe. They know us. They're very specific about trying to use the skills that we have, even if they seem abnormal to the global work world. I'm an electrician. Ben is the EMT fireman by trade, and they're both things that we never really thought that we could use globally for the gospel. And this org that we're with, which we'll talk about later, is very specific about trying to find places that we can. So when the war in Ukraine started, I want to say it was a week after it started, they thought of us. They knew we'd be willing, and our director emailed us, and we got on a plane 2 days after to go just work with the partners in any way that we could and help them.
Our organization has started a crisis response team that can be sent anywhere for this type of, whether it's a natural disaster or a war, like in this case, whatever it may be. And so just with my background in emergency services, I'd been asked to be a part of that team. And then Matt, with his background with welding and electrical work, we got asked to go and landed in Bucharest, Romania, 2 days after we were asked, and just began to plug in and serve. And we ended up on the Ukraine border doing anything from construction work to serving hot dogs to handing out Bibles, whatever they needed us to do. That's what we did.
Now, and just sharing that, it sounds like it's a pretty cut and dry thing. Like you were asked to go and you just got on a plane, you went over, you're handing out stuff, you're administering to people. It sounds like simple work, but what was going through your mind? And I guess also to say, like, you have families too. I mean, that you have all of this going around. And so what was the thought process knowing that you're going into a place, or you're being asked to go into a place where it's a little uncertain? I mean, it is dangerous. It is, and it's still unknown because you don't know what to believe about what's actually going on. I mean, what were your expectations going in?
I don't know that we really had any expectations leading up to the trip. When we were asked to go, I told my wife that I'd been asked to go to Romania and into Ukraine, and her response was, "Well, I would be shocked if you didn't go." And she was 100%. Same with Matt's wife, just 100% on board. We've over the last couple of years of just this journey we've been on, very much have come to a place where we were bought with a price. Our life is not our own. And so we're going to serve Jesus wherever we're asked to serve. And so no is really not in my vocabulary. And if somebody says there's a need and they ask us to come and help, I'm not going to tell them no, just because it might be dangerous or risky or whatever. And my wife's very much on the same page. And so it was, we were immediately willing to go, willing to serve whatever the scenario was. And so we tried to go in with no expectations, just because we really had no idea what we would be doing when we got there. We packed 72-hour bags where we could be completely self-sufficient, because we didn't know if we were going to be out in the middle of nowhere, if we're going to be in our hotels. Like, we literally had no idea, other than we were landing on a plane in Bucharest, Romania, and from there going to the border. So yeah, we just tried to go in with open hands and just asking that God would send us divine appointments and that we would serve wherever we were needed.
Talk a little bit about. Yeah, go ahead.
Just stemming off that, for me and my family, and I know Ben and Jess are in the same boat. When you're called by the Lord to work globally for the gospel, like Ben said, you're just begging for that opportunity. I can't really explain it any other way, but essentially sitting around waiting for the opportunity to do something like that. And in our circumstance, we had tried to do quite a few things in the year prior, and because of COVID and things, those things got canceled. So we were sitting in a place ready and willing, and really just doing everything we possibly could to get somewhere like that and do and use the skills we had. And so when we got that call, it was awesome. I mean, we were very excited, and we didn't even think about saying no.
That's encouraging. I think that for a lot of us, we pray that we have that kind of courage should we be asked to serve in that capacity, or in the capacity, like you guys said, that fits our skill set, because there's a lot of different ways that we can serve, and how God can use us. And so it's just encouraging to hear that you guys, put that full trust in God and said, if this is what we're being called to do, then we're going to do it. And so I admire that. And I thank God that the Spirit is working that way in your heart to just mold you guys that way, and also providing that opportunity. So talk a little bit about what was the biggest need. So you guys land in Romania, you get into the front lines in the Ukraine. What was the biggest need for the believers?
I mean, within, I think, hours off the plane, we're in a church that was housing refugees, and they barely knew our names, and they plugged us in. There was a huge need just for practical, things literally like making beds, doing laundry, carrying food. For me, I'm an electrician, and they put me right into electrical work. I did electrical work half the time I was there. So I would say the biggest need in the Romanian side and in the refugee effort side, once they got out of Ukraine was practical, hands-on, just servant-hearted stuff. I can let Ben speak to the Ukraine side of it.
Yeah, I mean, the Ukraine side, it was an interesting transition because the first couple of days we were there, the people coming across the border were the wealthy individuals in Ukraine who owned vehicles. And by the time that we left, it had totally changed to where it was people that had walked to the border. And so and it was all women and children. I maybe saw one or two guys that came across the border the whole time we were there because they were all staying back and fighting. And so you have moms and grandmas and their kids and a couple suitcases that have walked for days and days to get to the border. And it was nasty, bitter, cold, snowy. And so they were hungry and, cold. And so we were the first people they met when they came through the border. We would serve them hot food and something to drink and give them a Ukraine Bible. And then they would go into a tent that was heated where they could warm up and just begin the process with interpreters of trying to figure out where they were going to go and arrange transportation to get them somewhere safe. And so, just like Matt said, just the really practical stuff, food and something hot to drink when they got to the border. And right now, we've got partners that are still there working. It's supplies is running out of food and water and stuff inside of Ukraine. And so, money to get those supplies from other countries, other places, and get them to Ukraine is the big one right now.
Aside from just the physical work, I mean, that has to have a mental and spiritual toll on you. As you're seeing, your heart just has to ache for these women and children walking to the border. I mean, we have no concept. I would say the vast majority in our country have no frame of mind to even imagine what that is or what it would take to push us to do that. So how did the gospel work in your own heart spiritually as you were serving?
And I'll let Matt speak to this too, but for me, it drove me to worship because, where we were, the Romanian government was doing nothing to take care of these people. Every effort that was being made was by the Christians, by the believers there. And so the church had really united and came together to serve these refugees. And so for me, it was watching the unity of churches from different denominations, different backgrounds, all coming together for one common cause. And in this situation, these refugees were very vulnerable and open and desperate. And so they were very open to the gospel and to hearing, we were able to pray with people. And they didn't understand what we were saying, but, they'd be in tears just because there was somebody there that cared. So for me, just really motivate to not take the things we have for granted. And then just really, it drove me to a place of worship of just seeing the global church and how they united and responded. So,
yeah, I would definitely agree. Seeing the church just come together and break those denominational barriers to help one cause was awesome personally. I think that's the biggest thing that I took personally in my relationship with the Lord. But I would say just seeing and being right in the reality that it was something that we have never seen. Just like you said, we can't understand here in the U.S. It almost makes me want it. I don't know if that makes sense. It was so real, and the genuineness of the people. It was something like I've never seen here because there's never been crisis like that here, and the Lord works in crisis, and I guess that's what I'm getting at. And that God really opens hearts, and when there's crisis like that, you can see Him working so clearly, and it was awesome. And like I said, I'm not afraid to say we need it. We need that here and we need the reality of God is the only thing that's keeping you going.
Yeah, it was just real quick, a kind of a testimony or a story. While we were there, we were on the border and we got a message from one of our partners who is a pastor in Odessa. And he had told us that his church had been bombed, that all the windows were gone, stuff was falling in, and that for years and years and years that he had been praying that God fill his church. His message to us was that he said, brothers, I am thankful for the war because my church is full. He said, we don't have any room to put any more people in our building. Even though the doors are gone, the windows are gone, it's been bombed out, it's full, and people are coming to Jesus left and right. And so just to get that kind of a testimony from a pastor in Odessa whose church has been bombed and telling us that, hey, I'm thankful for the war because people are coming to Jesus. So it was that was really cool.
That's an amazing testimony to just how God is working. And I know that when we were talking in our previous conversation, one of the things that you had highlighted and you mentioned here was how the churches came together. And in America, where it seems like, man, we're just at each other's throats with, non-gospel or like non-gospel specific issues, secondary, tertiary issues, which sure, they're important and you should know them and you should, have a stance on them, but they shouldn't be a cause of division. Talk a little bit about how the one worship service went that you guys talked to me about earlier.
I mean, it was kind of the culmination of that for us is seeing, I think it was eight. There was 8 churches in Bucharest, Romania, that were all working together to help with the refugee crisis. And it was a crisis. The reason they had to work together is because they didn't have a choice. I mean, there was, I think at the time, 35,000 refugees a day coming out of Ukraine into Romania. And standing alone, individual churches couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And so out of just an absolute need, they came together. And I think they didn't think that it was going to well as it did. And by the end of that first week, they were so close and they saw and learned that, it was good. And so that's when they taught, the elders of each individual church talked, and they had this worship service together on Sunday morning. It was unheard of. And even in the area, I think it was not a normal thing. And it was rejuvenating for them. I could see that there was a lot of joy for them to be able to worship together because they had been working side by side together since the war began. And for us, I don't really know how to describe it. It was like something I've never seen. People from 8 different denominations worshiping together in the same way. It kind of makes those things like you're saying silly to argue about these minor issues when we could be worshiping together and helping fill a need is disappointing.
Yeah. And what a beautiful show of mercy from God. I mean, to be able to allow people to use a crisis to bring his church together. I mean, that's mercy on his part to have that be available and to have people lay aside their preferences and focus on Jesus. I mean, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I'm here with Ben and Matt, and they have a lot that I'm sure we could get into, and we're going to shift, especially dealing with Ukraine. But I want to shift in the conversation with the time that we have left, and I want to first talk about our sponsor for today's show, and that is Live Global. Live Global specializes in reaching Indigenous people groups in unreached countries where they connect with the local believers that are already there and partner with them to help and to support them in preaching and training, in resources, and in reaching that community of people with the gospel of Christ. And so if you are looking for an organization to support, to pray for, to learn more about, definitely give Live Global a look. You can click the link in the description of the video or on the podcast, or you can just go to their website, which is on the bottom of the screen right now. So Matt, Ben, joining me from Missouri currently. We've been talking about how they were working in Ukraine, how they have just been shaped and molded by what the Spirit was doing in the church, and obviously that has an individual effect on them. But truly, God is showing how He is shaping and molding His church as a even larger picture of that, and it is just amazing to hear that story. But in all of that, we've kind of been seeing, and we've mentioned a little bit of the contrast between the church that you are seeing uniting overseas in that area during crisis, and then I would say the comfortable church here in America, where we are almost looking for ways to divide ourselves. We're trying to figure out, it's almost like how businesses have to find a unique business proposition where we say, oh, well, we do this really well, so come to our church. And someone else is like, oh, well, we do this really well, so come to our church. How do we get past that? How do we look at our brothers and sisters from other denominations and say, it's the gospel that is what unites us and not to divide us? How would you speak to that?
Revelation chapter 2, where they're talking to the church in Ephesus and saying that, he lists all these things that the church there has done and done well. But then he says, I have this against you. You have forgotten your first love. And I think we're seeing that here in the West, is that we have forgotten our first love, that church has never been about us. It's not about what makes me happy. It's not about me coming and feeling good so I can check the box off and say I went to church on Sunday. It's not about serving me or you or anybody else. It's about Jesus and His name and His glory and His renown. And we got to get back to our first love, where everything we do is compelled and motivated by our love for Jesus. And until that happens, we're going to fuss and fight over silly things that don't, at the end of the day, really don't matter. And if we believe that time is short, and I think it probably is, there's a whole lot of people in this world that still need to hear about Jesus, and there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done. And we've got to press into our love for Jesus and unite around that and work together to get the gospel to them.
Amen.
Amen to that. Matt, what are your thoughts?
That's hard to beat.
I know, yeah. That's why I threw it to you. I don't have anything to say after that. So,
I definitely agree with Ben. I think in the culture that we have had here, it's comfortable. It's this, what I say, the lie of the American dream has taught us to be individualistic. That, like you said, I'm going to go to this church because it works the best for me, because I like it, because I like the music, or I like the whatever. Put it in the, name it. And it's become, just like Ben said, it's become about us as individuals. And that is nowhere in Scripture. There is nothing in any of Paul's writings or anywhere where he talks about building up the church or building the church about individualism.
right.
And that's, to me, that's what it is. It's people thinking about themselves and not what their first love was, and being a part of a church and what the Big C church can really do and what they should be doing. I think that's the main issue, and that's really the root of it.
So one of the reasons, the main reason why we have not been showing Matt and Ben is for security. And the reason for that is because they're getting ready to go into their next phase of what they believe God is calling them to do. And so for security reasons, we're only using first names. We're not showing faces. And so Matt, Ben, talk a little bit about what God has been preparing for you here in the next few months.
So yeah, I mean we are getting ready to. We've got a team of 6 adults, and between those, 3 couples and 7 kids amongst everybody, getting ready to make the move long term, full time, into South Asia, into a unreached area of the world. It is restricted access, meaning that they are opposed to gospel work. And so for that reason, we have to be careful, we have to have security precautions. But yeah, it's really just been a journey. I mean, it started back in 2018 of God kind of stirring this up in us, and over a period of a couple years, just meeting with our pastors and praying and meeting together, that God really confirmed that He was calling all 6 of us to form a team to go together. And then when we knew what country He was calling us to go to, we started looking at Joshua Project and realized that the largest concentration of unreached people groups was in a certain region of this country. And so we just decided that that's where we're going. And so began the journey of training and prepping and preparing. And now we're in that partnership development phase where we're raising our support, and we're hoping by the end of this year, beginning of next year, that we're going to be making the move to South Asia.
What does that process look like? I mean, to get people on board. I mean, this is obviously, like you mentioned, this is a full-time, everyone's going. This isn't a Ukraine situation. This is wives, kids. This is a complete removal of where you're planted right now. I mean, this is a full uproot to an extent. I mean, that's not to say that you're losing everything here, because they're still going to be supporting and all of that, but functionally, your day to day is going to be completely changed. Walk us through that process of how did you and your wives and your team come to know that this is what God is calling you to do?
It's a tough one. I go back to what we said when we got the call to go to Romania. When God calls you, especially something specific as this, because He's called all of us.
Yeah.
There's something inside of you that knows that that's where you should be. Now, granted, this is a very big deal. It is uprooting everything that we know and leaving everything that we have behind. And that was something we had to work through. I mean, it's not as simple as just give it up. I'm not going to lie and say that it's like that. Definitely something we had to and are working through with our wives, with our family. But our life is not our own. And just as He's called each and every one of us as believers to share the gospel, this is the role that He has for us. And to not be willing, or to not push through that hard stuff and be willing to leave everything, we'd be disobeying. I mean, it's just plain as that. And I'm not going to disobey the Lord. And so even though it's hard, I know that's what I go back to in the tough conversations, the tough times. The biggest thing is having our extended family and our parents and our grandparents understand too. I mean, I think that's the hardest part in our circumstance for sure. And because they're not called to this place like we are, they can't really understand that. But I always go back to that calling and the confidence in God is saying go. And we know what it looks like when you disobey. And so
yeah,
I'm going to obey Him, and it's going to be hard.
Yeah, and I guess practically speaking, just real quick, when this all started for us, we knew that God was stirring us and moving us in this direction. Step one is you have to be serving, engaged, involved in a local church. If you're not, forget about it.
Yeah.
Global gospel work was never intended to be done outside of the local church sending you. And so when that started, we began meeting with our pastors and discerning and letting them pray and us praying with them and talking to people in our body that we were engaged in, that we did serve, that we were involved with. And over a period of about 6 months of just praying, God really confirmed, not only for us, but also through our pastors, that this is what God was calling us to do. And so then the church began the process of sending us. And so practically it starts by serving your church. Get involved, get plugged in, and serve locally.
That's a great point. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
If you're not doing that here, you're not going to do it there.
Right.
If you're not living that gospel-centered life here, you're going to drown when you go there.
Yeah, we say, sorry, we say on the show frequently, why we're even titled the network of Love Local is because if you're not loving and being engaged locally, you can't have a global impact. But if you are loving locally, that God is going to use your faithfulness locally to reach globally. And we need to be building people up and not just to send, but people to build up in our own churches. I mean, we all grow old. We all phase out of different areas and things that God is calling us to do. And part of that is training people and equipping people as they're coming up through life to replace what we're doing or to expand on what God is doing. And so it's a really incredible thing to hear. And it's encouraging, again, I know I've said it before, but to see how your church has come together and has partnered with you. And this is not a whim kind of thing. Like you said, this started 6 years or 4 years ago almost, where this has started. And so this isn't just something that you're up and going. This is something that the whole church is involved in. And what a beautiful picture of how we can help each other discern, how we can support each other, how we can pray for each other. It's just phenomenal. And I'm just so thankful that you guys are able to be part of that and kind of model that for everyone else who may be listening to this. So we have just over a minute left. And so I just want to get to one quick question for each of you to respond. What is it that you guys are holding on to? What is a truth of who God is and what he's done that you are just clinging to as you go and serve?
He's infinite in all his attributes. And so that word is what sticks with me. So he is infinitely good. He's infinitely faithful. And so I know that no matter where he calls us to go, no matter what happens, no matter what kind of struggles or suffering or persecution we run into, that he is there. He is faithful. At the end of the day, we're not to fear man who can just kill the body, but to fear our God who can kill both body and soul. And I know that to be gone here is to be present with him. And so I know no matter what's coming, no matter what happens, we're going to be with him. So it's a win-win for us.
I would say he is coming. And the fact that he is coming and I can play a role in what he has, and when bringing that to fruition, that's what I carry every day. Look to heaven and wait for him. And if I can play a part globally, even better.
Thank you guys. I genuinely appreciate your hearts and how God is using you. We're definitely going to be keeping you guys in our prayers, and hopefully we can touch base with you guys as you continuing it closer to your sending. And so I just want to thank you guys again. That was Ben and Matt. They are going to be working over in South Asia soon, and so definitely keep them in your prayers. And you can learn more through Live Global. So you can visit that website, which is on the bottom of your screen again, or in the episode show notes. That's all we have for this episode of Mission and Likeness. I just want to thank you again for tuning in. And again, I want to thank Ben and Matt. You can subscribe and become a local here at Mission and Likeness and on Love Local. Just go to lovelocalpa.com/join, and you can sign up there, or you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram. You can subscribe on YouTube. Until next week, that's all we have. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you then.